it's a good way of actually writing. Actually, a lot of poets do write that way. They write off a bit and they just cut out and leave the essential of, because it would be quite. There are poets and lyricists that can write straight off their head. You know what I mean? Bernie Taupin, is like that. The lyricist for Elton John, he writes straight off into rhythm and poetry form, but we're not all of us that have the gift of Bernie Taupin. But there are other great poets that used to write like that too. But most poets don't write like that. Most poets don't like that. Just the same with music. I mean, Mozart was similar. He would write straight the melody. So if you were just to play, even if it's an opera or a symphony, whatever it is, on a piano or on a guitar, you'd just be playing the melody. So he would start off with that and then do the basses, everything underneath. So he would just go din, 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 and then all that would then form the basis of it, and then underneath. So it's similar with that, but only some people are gifted enough to do that. Most people start from the bottom up, and build art from the bottom up. You know what I mean? It's like sculptors as well. They say they already see it in the rock, and then they just got to chisel out what's not the sculptor. But yeah, for us mere mortals, I mean, it's great to write a paragraph. Then we did a bit of an editing, 2 or 3 of them. Remember, we did editing, then we did grammar at the end, and so and last time we just chose some of the words. So for mine, it ended up being darkened skies, rain, remembrance, dependence, nature. What I know, overshadowed by force, and nothing. So we decided that we're going to end up with the main theme of that poem would be how the person feels and how much control they have over their happiness despite the weather. And so that's why I wanted to end up with that. So I put nothing affects, that's right, nothing affects, nor clouds, rain, don't change how I feel. Then the last one was happiness. Nothing affects, nor nature, nor rain, don't change how I feel. And then I put happiness is not the clouds. I thought, and make it a little bit more poetic. So because we use cloud as well, for depression, that type of thing, I thought it was a nice analogy. So whether the cloud inside or the cloud outside, we still have effect. And so I ended up from a big paragraph, then a smaller one, I ended up with darkened skies, rain, remembrance, dependence of nature. What I know, overshadowed by force. And nothing, clouds or rain, don't change how I feel. Happiness is not the cloud. So that's a little poem that that came out of that initial one when I started off. Remember, it's wonderful how the skies have darkened, but I am not affected. It has not affected my mood. The rain has reminded me of my exposure and dependence on nature, the unpredictability of the heavens. Well, initially I put of the sky, and then I changed to the heaven. And its forces dwarfs my understanding. It reminds me to separate my feelings from the chaotic and random eventfulness of the environment. I can still be happy with clouds and rain and wind and cold. I have full control of the way I feel. Nothing affects the way I'm thinking. And with that, there is nothing, not even nature, that can affect my happiness. So I had all that, and it ended up being darkened skies, rain, remembrance, dependence on nature. What I know, overshadowed by force, and nothing affects, nor clouds nor rain, don't change how I feel. Happiness is not the cloud. Yeah, I'm relatively happy with that. That's so we did that a little bit. It was good to keep that in mind. It's a wonderful little exercise. You get and I think we did say last week too, even if you find a paragraph of an author you like, maybe you can do a little poetic summary of it and see, because it's already well written. So that's a good start. if you have someone that it's fun to do. But we pick our battles, so to speak. It's just another little tool that we have for journaling. If one day, you never know, you might decide to do something like that. One day you wake up and you feel that way. It is a bit like that, isn't it? It's also depending on, it comes to us a lot of the time. So with creativity, a lot of the time, it comes to you. Professional artists, of course, they put themselves in the space to be able for that creativity to arise, because they've got time limitations and so forth. But for us that don't, it's always handy to have, but not necessarily useful all the time. So we looked at the third person thing, which is very powerful. Yeah, we talked about seeing ourselves objectively, if you like, and with the third person way of writing, we automatically using a tool that we have to look at ourselves. Once we talk about ourselves in third person, that's why it's so hard sometimes to write a CV, or resume. And then if you continue to do it, it's a lot of fun too, because you can kind of like talk about yourself, and there's room for humor to humor yourself, And once you do that, it's very difficult to feel offended when anyone else says anything to you, because you've already said it to yourself. Yeah, I know, I wrote about it. So it's very powerful. So yeah, that's one good exercise. Yeah, mix it up with journaling. What's important, that it's not a chore, that it's something that adds to your life, not subtracts. Once, like anything else, we've all spoken to people, even ourselves, when we start an activity and then we just lose the fun of it, it becomes different. So sometimes we leave it, go back to it. With journaling, that's fine. Like I said, I do that too. There's times that I leave it, and you see it. I was actually telling a young patient of mine, 13-year-old, he had talking about a science project he had, and saying what's the best way of starting. I said, well, it's best 20 minutes, 45 minutes all up, but 20 minutes and 5 minutes off, then 20 minutes again, That's the best way. And then you leave it. If you do that every day, you should be fine. But that 5 minutes in between is great, because you get distance from it. And that means as 45 minutes, there's nothing else. So even when you have your 5 minutes off and you sit and you're standing outside, preferably, you're not on the phone, you're not on other things. You're still kind of like, yeah, you might have a glass of water, but your brain is still working on it, funny enough. When you go back and sit in front of the project again, or whatever you are that we're doing, the studying, we see it from different lights. So that space and time separation is very important. And with journaling, it happens. We automatically have it, of course, because when you write in the morning, then you've got the night one coming up if you're going to do that. And so more than likely you'll read what you write in the morning, and it'll give you a different impression of it. And that itself will allow you to be able to know or change the way you write for the next time. So you will automatically have that separation of time and space from it. You leave it for a while, come back to it. But sometimes we need more. Sometimes we need a week, a month. Sometimes people go years without journaling, they go back to it. So no pressure. Number one thing with journaling, no pressure. Keep it fun. React to it as you feel. Don't feel that you have to, There'll be a morning that you wake up and you haven't done it for a while and you go, oh, I really want to journal now. And again, it'll come to you. It's like anything else. We condition ourselves to write. So if you can write roughly about the same time every day, if you've got that option, that's great. You get up, you have a cup of tea first, whatever it may be, or breakfast, or you decide to go straight to it, whatever it is. If you do it regularly and consistently, then that helps. We talked about that. Yeah, you open it up, you get your pen, your pencil. You might read what you wrote the day before, the night before. But ideally, it's something reflective to start off with. You might be sitting somewhere looking around. Might be something about the weather, might be something about something that's happening in the world, something, the way you're feeling, or maybe the night you might have had a dream, or anything that comes straight up to mind. It's good. Sometimes we just go with that initial feeling, get words on the page. Yeah, the blank page, we talked about that. It's always a little bit daunting. Oh, what am I going to write, And that's why creative writing sometimes is so daunting, because you've got a blank page and you want to write something creative. So you're thinking about the end. And we looked at, for example, in creative writing, how to maybe take the pressure off from that. So if we're not Bernie Taupin, start off with a little sentence, a paragraph, and then maybe it's something you'd want to edit it anyway, whether it's down to a poem, down to a proverb even. We talked about that. You could even keep going with what I wrote maybe, you could come up with something. You could even say happiness is not the clouds. That might be the proverb, who knows. I think most people A lot of people with a certain amount of experience that would roughly understand what someone's talking about. Oh, yeah, I kind of like half get that. Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah. But and that's what proverbs do. It's they're keys to unlocking your own imagination from there. So it doesn't have to be spelt out. That's why they're so wonderful. And so I think we said like better alone than in bad company. I mean, that tells us a lot. And it's quick, it's fast, the other person gets it, we get it. And a lot of proverbs survive because they're so easy to remember and so forth. And that's another little exercise. You could do that for yourself as well. But what's important here is that the blank page is sometimes quite daunting. So you just get words on page. You don't need to come up with the perfect sentence, the perfect proverb, the perfect poem, or even the perfect entry. So that's why reflective thought is always pretty cool to start off with. Yeah, I'm feeling had a terrible night, had a dream, maybe write down the dream. That helps. I think we talked about earlier on in this course with regards to dreams, write it down, maybe have a little pencil or notebook next to your bed. And that's how we treat people that have recurring nightmares as well. Get it out of your unconscious into your consciousness. It's already therapeutic if you do that anyway, as you put it down on paper. Plus, you're just getting words, you're getting that page filled up. And then it becomes easier. Your brain knows what you want. It's a bit like a warm-up for an athlete, yeah. You got to warm up your body, but you also have to warm up your brain. That's why athletes have those rituals before they serve, before they kick and something. So the brain is connected. Oh, yeah, that's right. I want to kick that in between those poses or something. And or we want to serve that ball. So it's conditioning, isn't it? Yeah, there's no pressure. Take the pressure off yourself. That's the number. If someone asks me what's the number one recommendation for journaling, would be no pressure. Make sure there's no pressure to do it. Or else it's a chore. And if it's a chore, it won't work. Journaling works if it's something you want to do, yeah. Remember we talked about Marcus Aurelius. I always do in my journaling classes because he's probably the most famous journaler that we know. Of course, Emperor of Rome in 2,000 years ago. And of course, he didn't have any reason why to write anything. It was just only for himself. It's not like he had a contract or anything. And we're very fortunate that it survived because it gives us a lot of insight into not only his life, but history and so forth, what was happening. So, and then it's also a Stoic philosophy that we can use of how to not worry too much about things we can't control and so forth. So Marcus Aurelius' book is called Meditations, if you're interested. And it's a wonderful little book. It's divided into 12 little chapters. It's a book that was obviously everything put together. He didn't write as a book. It's all his entries put together. So it's been divided by the scholars in 12 chapters and so forth, just by theme and that. Yeah, and the first chapter he talks about how grateful he is for the people that made him who he was, his mother, his stepfather, because he lost his biological father very, very young, and how, and the education he got and so. But also throughout the book, it's wonderful for an emperor, he was the most powerful person in the known world at the time, of course. They didn't know that the East existed. And to be able to say something like, I have to make sure I kiss my children goodnight every night. You just don't know. It might be the last time, it might be your last possibility. And remind himself, regardless of all the luxury he has around him, at being the Emperor of Rome, he has to make decisions for the people, and so forth. That's what made him, the last of the good emperors, If you've seen Gladiator with Russell Crowe, the emperor that was at the time, whose mean was actually Marcus Aurelius' son. Yeah, everyone says the only mistake Marcus Aurelius made was to allow his son to be emperor after he died, because his son wasn't him. He was very, very different, and that's the basis of that movie, but that's a real character. That's based on history, yeah. And I think the Gladiator, the main character, talks about that he only fights and takes orders from his father. He talks to him like that. We know that a lot because of these wonderful notes, and he had no pressure to do it. He wanted to do it because he knew that how his brain worked. He had to remind himself of the important things. Some things are just not important. Things are important is to appreciate what we have and the people around us, and to set ourselves up in the morning for success, because we can make a bad decision. But if we write it down and tell our brain what we want to do, that's a great start. Yeah, and so, it's more powerful than what we think, and it's not new. So there you go. It's not new, luckily, because we've learnt a lot about ourselves throughout history because of people jotting things down. And for you, we did talk about that. It could be for yourself. It could be for you, people you love, something to leave behind maybe one day. You might want to eventually one day decide, I want to actually put this into a format where I can keep it. You might want to put into a digital format or and so forth. And so that gives you, at least you've got the options, but it's really for therapy. It's really for setting ourselves up in the morning for success. It doesn't guarantee us, but it can set ourselves up. And to go to sleep with a clear mind, at least give us the opportunity. That's what journaling's for. The rest is a bonus.